Welcome everyone to the Electronic Services System Coordinating Committee Special Meeting, March 19th at 2 p.m. I would like to remind everyone please to sign in on the chat pod so we're sure to have clear attendance. And Phil, do you have any other introductions you wanted to make?
I would just, may I suggest we do a quick roll call of the official ESS committee members, just to kind of dispense with that. I can give a shout out. So Travis Case,
Here.
Denise Baker,
Here.
Jolene Goodchild,
Here.
Jamie Sturgill,
Here.
Natalie Steffner,
Here.
Melissa Manson,
Here.
Julie Haggerty,
Here.
Anne has already announced herself, Eric Sloan.
Here.
David Erickson. I know he's with us. He was. David, we'll go ahead to Dylan Malone.
Here.
Okay, and that covers the SS members, and Anne, take it away.
Okay, well, we'll just move right into the legislative update.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask for a team effort on this, because yesterday there was an important meeting at the Capitol. It was on the subject of House File 328, and it was an official subcommittee meeting. The bill, as it was originally introduced, as I understand, was advanced by the subcommittee to the full Ways and Means Committee. And if you did not have an opportunity to observe it through the Capitol video system, generally what happened is that the bill was presented or discussed as is, and then participants were invited to the table to give their comments. So there were a number of recorders, some of whom are represented here today, to share their points of view. And there were also people that were represented that were on the advocacy side. So you had some who expressed some concern, some who expressed support, and then some of the participants simply were there to ask questions. And again, I would defer to the people who are present to chime in with your comments, but I believe it was a civil discussion. And Representative Nordman, who is chairing the subcommittee, was receiving comments from all the parties in attendance. Um, I think obviously, as they advanced the bill, he expressed support for the direction that he was heading, uh, and um, and invited the participants in the meeting to offer their suggestions. One example where he asked for some additional information is any information that would provide insight into the cost of operating uh, the um, the e-submission service separately from the search application. I indicated to him that I would be doing some analysis that might provide some insight to that. That is not done. I did get started on it today, but it's not complete. Um, I, I'm hoping to have something somewhat logical and rational ready early next week that can be shared with everybody. So after the meeting was over, I think there was some huddling happening about, what people's assessments were of the discussion, and maybe a discussion about what to do next. So our thinking, without initially going through every detail of the bill, I did uh, prepare a slightly updated version of the summary of the legislation One of the maybe confusing parts of that is that you have the bill itself, which is House File 328, and then you have um, an amendment that is sort of a strike everything after the enactment clause and replaces everything in the original bill. Um, that has been circulating. We have done some analysis of it, and the summary that I distributed originally in the packet, and also the updated version of the summary that I distributed earlier today, those those are, I guess I would say, not quite official yet, because any amendments would actually be considered in the Full Ways and Means Committee and not in the subcommittee itself. The information that I'm sharing with you, hopefully everybody can see it on screen and that you have it in the packet that was distributed or available for download, um, is um, is the latest and really the only version of a committee amendment that we have seen. We do not know if there are planned changes by the sponsors of the bill, um, but they are asking for input. And really, this document that I'm sharing now is the document that they mostly are asking for input about. Um, um, Again, it's not my intent to go through every section of the bill, but if you look at the top of the summary, basically you can divide it into some main sections. So one of the main things that it does include is it does include the requested increase of the recording fee from $5 to $10. It does allocate $2 to a recorder's technology fund. It does eliminate the additional transaction fee, and it does make some other simplification changes that are consistent with what was originally recommended to the General Assembly. It does not include the $3 allocation for our land records. Um, um, in essence, it is maintaining what you might call the existing $1 fee that goes into Fund 255 in the State Treasurer's Office today, um, with the exception that any county that was not in the 28-year agreement would not be required to contribute that $1. So I hope I'm presenting that fairly, but with regard to fees, that's essentially what the bill does. And then there are some components of the bill that are consistent with what was advanced in Senate File 371. It is not entirely the same, but it does include provisions relating to modifications to recording requirements that would be in an amended version of 331-606 and 331-606B. It does include the proposed changes in the recording standards for surveys. So there are some policy elements that are included that look very similar, may not be exactly the same as what was incorporated in Senate File 371, but it basically moves in that direction. And at one point in the subcommittee meeting yesterday, Representative Nordman asked for a show of hands to ask, how many in the room were in favor of the changes in the formatting requirements and the related policies. Not everybody raised their hand in favor, but I would say the vast majority, particularly of the recorders that were in the room, did express support for moving forward with that. The complicated things about House File 328 primarily relate to Iowa land records as we know it today. And the bill does provide some direction, I'm going to say, for the potential separation of the e-submission service from the the land record search application. Does include provisions that contemplate some type of private sector vendor taking over the search application. Exactly how that would happen is not fully defined, except that it does refer to the County Reporters Association choosing a vendor. And then there are some other things that are incorporated that kind of get to the main sticking points with regard to the 28E agreement. So while it doesn't explicitly state um, um, that any particular county would be withdrawing from the 28E agreement, the provisions generally would permit a county to withdraw. The bill and the amendment generally remove language from the legislation or the current statute that currently says every county must participate, and it removes basically the requirements to follow the policies and procedures that are approved by the governing board of the electronic services system and Iowa land records. So those are the main components of the bill, and up to this point in time, from an ESS perspective, me speaking to the governing board, we have been taking a posture of not expressing support, but trying to maintain a line of communication to Representative Nordman to better understand what the wishes were and to identify any possible areas of middle ground. And the primary purpose of that is that, at least from my perspective, and I think Bob and Bob Rafferty and Nick Laney would share this point of view, is that when you just kind of say no, it's hard to have communication at that point. So we've tried to keep the channel of communication open as much as we can, and we have been working on some ideas to identify some potential middle ground. We don't know if it actually would be accepted or not, but it's something that that needs to be discussed, and frankly, we know we need direction from the governing board about where you want to go with this. So what I would like to just spend a few minutes on today is to talk to you a little bit in more detail about what that potential middle ground might be, um, and and to receive your comments and discussion. Because now that a bill has been advanced in subcommittee, and we do expect it to be presented to the full Ways and Means Committee for discussion, that if we're going to do something one way or another, now is probably the time when we need to make that decision. And that is your decision. That is not my decision. It's not Bob's decision or Nick's. It's your decision. So if you'll bear with me for just a little bit longer, and then we'll open up more broadly for discussion. I'm gonna go back to the packet and skip ahead. And by the way, the updated packet, the first version had 45 pages. This one has 46 pages. And in this version, and maybe Christian or one of the team members can clarify this, what page I'm on. But in the updated packet, you would be looking for page 25. So, as we've looked at it, there are some elements in 228 that maybe we would do a little bit differently, but there are some elements that sort of make sense and can be looked at in sort of a neutral way. The one that I would consider sort of in neutral territory, or potentially, is that in the current law, the um, there are references to electronic documents and electronic recording that specifically refer to the county land record information system. And if you look at those things strictly, you might reach the conclusion that, hey, the statute is written so that only the ESS system or Iowa land records can do e-submission in Iowa. And we have heard comments from some who have said, you know, hey, you guys are a monopoly, you're closing off competition, that sort of thing, which I don't really agree with, but I do understand how somebody could have that point of view. And so there are changes that could be made in about 2 or 3 sections of the code that should be less specific about the ESS system in Iowa land records and maybe more generic.
Make sure you don't put too much on this table. Okay.
Yeah, remember to keep yourself muted if you can. Um, so, um, so one thing that could be done, is if it was the desire of the group to say, you know, if you really want to go and set up a different channel for each submission with your vendor, you should do that. Now that doesn't mean that we want to diminish our land records or the ILR e-submission service. It just means that, and it does not mean that we would not expect or want a county to participate and use the Iowa Land Refugee Submission Service. But one of the main things that has been asked for by Representative Norman and the advocates of the bill has been to have the authority to do that. And so without, you know, choosing winners and losers, there are ways that you can make adjustments in the code that would permit that to happen. And that is, I would say, one of the 2 main asks of the advocates for this is, hey, I just want to work with my vendor. I'll still be a part of this statewide system, ostensibly, but I want to do something else too. And so there probably does not have to be many changes to the code to permit that to happen. Another thing that we have heard that the advocates of this bill feel is really important to them is that they don't want to be operating under the direction or the rules established under the 28E agreement. They have pointed out, and I think correctly so, that the typical 28E agreement is a voluntary thing that 2 governments come together or more to do something cooperatively. And we are not that. The fact of the matter is that the legislature and the stakeholder community in 2005 said, we got to have some structure to this. And they mandated that the county land record information system be set up under a 28E agreement. And they mandated that everybody participate. And they gave authority to the ESS coordinating committee to establish policy and rules for how things are supposed to operate. So, is it possible to permit a county or other counties to withdraw from the 28E agreement? And the answer to that is yes. In fact, the existing 28E agreement has a provision in it that allows somebody to withdraw. Now, I would understand somebody said, well, it doesn't really let me do that because the law still says I have to participate. But the 28E agreement itself does say that a county can withdraw from the 28E agreement. And the procedure that is outlined in the 28E agreement is to have the Board of Supervisors pass a resolution that says, hey, we want to withdraw. And then that would be passed to the General Assembly, and it would require the General Assembly to adopt maybe not a statute, but a session law of some kind, or an enabling act that says, we hereby give permission for this county to withdraw. And if they did that, then they probably would be able to withdraw from the 28E agreement. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't still be required to participate in the applications of the e-submission service in some way. But it is possible to do that. And I would say, you know, just thinking about this, there have been statements made that the counties who might want to withdraw would still be willing to participate in the submission service and still be willing to transfer records to the search application. And if they did that, then arguably we could still have a statewide system. I think where the rub comes in is, what do you mean by participate? And from my point of view, participate means that we have these published APIs, we have integrations with every service provider, every one of them, and that those would continue to be used to transfer records and to accept e-submission applications. I don't think we would interpret that to mean that, you know, we would do some kind of development work to set up a completely separate system for an individual county or even a small group of counties. But we already have both of those applications and they're working. And I think the expectation would be that there would be some solid commitment to use those applications going forward. And if that were true, then it would be possible to say, okay, we still have a statewide system, and you know, we may have a little bit of leakage in the submission activity, but it wouldn't be cold turkey cutoff. I don't think it would have to be that way. So you take those two things together, and I'll repeat them. You know, if a county was permitted to do something in addition to the Iowa land records, and if a county was permitted to still participate or required to participate in Iowa land records, but not be in the 28-year agreement, then okay, that potentially could be some middle ground. There have been other comments made by the advocates of the bill to say they don't really want to be subject to the rules of the 28E agreement, and those things could be separated. So it would be possible to say, hey, you have to conform to the technical and business requirements of the e-submission service and the search application, but all of the other stuff that doesn't relate to that, you know, things that relate to governance of ESS and so on, since you're not a member of the 28E agreement, the rules that would be established relating to those types of things would not apply to those particular counties. And that, I think, could be done in such a way that on the important stuff, particularly relating to participation in the application, both technically and following agreed to business rules, you know, it would be possible to have that kind of separation from the 28 EU organization. And so if you combine those things together, um, perhaps it would be possible to provide the advocates for the legislation with, to say, here, we're doing things that you want to do, you want to see this happen. You've said you're willing to continue to participate in the application. We want to say, put something in the show that affirms that, but then you still are together. And then sort of in the backdrop of all of this is that, I think the expectation could be there to say, can we stop talking about separating e-submission and the search application? Can we stop talking about trying to find another vendor to do the search application? Can we stop talking about basically things that, could jeopardize the viability and sustainability of the ESS and our land records? And one of the things that should be done is, instead of using the language that's currently in this amendment to House File 328, we really have a fairly broad consensus around most of the issues in Senate File 371. And that language should be easily imported into House File 328 with some of the changes that I just described to you. And so I'm presenting this to you from the standpoint of, is there something that should be presented that would represent some middle ground that would show some, I guess, good faith participation, but still maintain a statewide system and maintain the ability to operate a statewide system successfully. And I should mention, I may have overlooked it, but a part of that, kind of using Senate File 371 as the framework, is the expectation that that $3 allocation would still be there. And I would say it should be there for all counties, whether you're in the 28-year agreement or not, because, we're trying to be a statewide system for everybody. If you want to do something outside of that on your own, okay, go do that, but everybody would still have an obligation to participate. Now, I have a few other issues that we need to talk about that are a part of this bill, but I guess I'm going to put myself out there as a target, whatever you want to call me, and say, yes, I for the greater good and actually getting something done, I would be open to looking at some compromises like this. But I work for you, and we're kind of at a point where we need to say, what are we willing to live with, or do we just need to say no and make that the position? So I'm going to turn it back to Ann and, open it up for discussion.
Okay. So we would accept discussion on, Phil, did you intend for us to discuss middle ground, or do you want us to talk about everything?
Well, I think you should talk about everything. Somewhere along the way, I think you in this meeting you kind of need to come to hopefully a decision point. Are you open to pursuing middle ground, yes or no? And then if no, we just simply, are you going to ask us to register against the bill, and that's just going to be our position. So
And should we have this be a discussion of the ESS coordinating committee only, or is this for all?
I think I want to encourage you to have the ESS committee at least start out the conversation, and all of the other folks are on there. Obviously, we have it set up as a meeting, so try to be orderly and maybe put a note in the chat pod or raise your hand, so to speak, so that Ann can facilitate that. But start with the committee for any discussion, and then everybody else at least start by adding your comments to the chat pod. That's what I would suggest.
Okay, so ESS committee members, are there any comments or recommendations that you would like to make?
This is Julie Haggerty. I just want to make this kind of, I need a clarification just a little bit. I personally don't want to ever hold anybody hostage. And I don't think that, I think this is I've learned a lot about compromise in the last few days. So, my question is, Phil, just for clarification, what we want to do is insert kind of our bill 371, which covered a lot of ground, and then accept the wants and desires of the other part, which is to opt out of the 28E agreement, which
Uh,
the
Yeah, I think so because the way House File 328 is constructed, it's hard to navigate and it's a little bit confusing, and in some cases we aren't really sure what is intended or if the words actually mean what were intended. Um, and you know, I think we, as a part of this, just want to put aside this whole idea of breaking apart ESS and Iowa land records and get into the root of the issue. And at least from what I've heard, I may be wrong, but what I've heard is being under the 28E agreement and having the ability to do something different or in addition to what we do in e-submission is something, those seem to be the central themes. So yeah, I'm not saying that they would accept it, but Senate File 371 is a cleaner bill. It has a fairly broad consensus about its contents. Um, there are still some areas that might be open for discussion. Um, uh, you know, for example, we have to we have to recognize, and so do the advocates for House File 328, is that we do not have a consensus among stakeholders about the fee policy. And in fact, there are some subsets of that, and I'll just name the bankers and the mortgage companies, you know, who are very uncomfortable with the fee policy proposal as it sits right now because of the costs associated with mortgage documents. So we just all have to recognize, including the advocates of House File 328, is that there is not a slam dunk ahead of us for getting a fee policy adopted because of the known concerns. But that said, uh, 371 is a kind of as a body, a cleaner set of policy issues that would be easier to work with than House File 328, in my opinion.
okay.
Okay,
Well,
Julie, did you have anything else to add to that or any other direction you
I'm
want to?
kind of in favor of going in this direction. I'm kind of in favor, I'm thinking about it, but I'm in favor of preserving. What I heard in the meeting yesterday was that nobody was for dismantling Iowa land records. They were for making it better, and they were for preserving it because it was a statewide system, and they understood that. So that was somewhat comforting. And I just feel like we need to put up a united front somehow. And in order for us to pass, we want to get the increase in fees, which we have been trying to get for years. So I'm in favor of finding some middle ground and moving forward with the increase in fee bill.
Okay, are there other ESS committee members that would like to comment?
This is Jamie. I guess my comment would be, I have a lot of concerns about the mention of a vendor when, we have the county land record information system that is ours. I don't want it to be alluded to that we would put it out there for an RFP because Iowa Land Records is our system. I don't want that. Personally, I don't want that language in there.
Well,
Okay,
Jamie, how would if a recorder chose to opt out of the 28E agreement and wanted to use a vendor for, let's just say, the e-submission part, how would they, how else could we put it in there so that they could use, they don't have to use us? I guess it would be that they can opt out. I guess that's doing it right, Phil?
Well, I'm not gonna put words in their mouth, and I'm not saying that they would agree to this, but to me, creating an opportunity for them to do something with their service provider is something I really want to do. But at the same time, we already have an integration. We already have a very simple application, easy for both submitters and recorders to use, so that if a document came in through the e-submission service, they could log in just like they do today and process that document. Most of the indexing still happens on the local system. You know, the majority of it does. And so they're using their local system. The only thing they would have to continue to do is that if something came through our system, that they would process it, inspect the document, and then accept or decline it. It seems to be a small step to do, when you also talk about the opportunity of opening up to other channels. So my expectation would be, what I would recommend anyway, is that if we go down this road, there should be a very clear expectation that, even if they don't promote it, which would be a disappointment, but if even if they didn't promote the e-submission service, that they would pay attention to it and they would process documents through it. They wouldn't move to the back of the line. They'd just do what they're supposed to do. And if they did that, then I think there's some room for collaboration.
So the vendor part was more like for the search part, right? So it was a statewide search website vendor approved by the Iowa County Recorders Association. I guess that's the part that part of it that has given me a stomach ache, is that part, like we would have to approve a vendor. That's where I'm going, Julie, with that.
And I understand, I get it.
So they could.
This is Denise. So is there any reason why we couldn't have it put in there that Iowa Land Records would be the one used for the statewide search system that, everybody would be part of?
I think essentially, if you kept the framework of the county land record information system, that you wouldn't need to do that. And from my point of view, we have a central authentication system, one login for both e-submission and search. We've invested a lot in that. It works. Why wouldn't we just continue to do that? So, I would really recommend or suggest that, this whole issue of separating things just be put aside. It just does not make sense. I'm still going to do my homework assignment, but I really, I don't think it's something that should be accepted. It just is not sensible.
Hey, Phil, it's Lisa.
So, and then,
Comments in the chat pod that someone should read.
I was waiting until we were through with our ESS discussion. Anybody who wants to look at the chat pod, there are some comments being made. I will review them. I thought we were trying to keep this as ESS at the moment, so I would accept any other ESS comments.
This is Melissa. So my question is, I guess, Phil, how does this amendment, will it allow us to do a statewide notification system? Or is that out?
No, I don't think so. Well, okay. To be clear, if we're talking about the House File 328 amendment that we're looking at right now, I'm not saying that a statewide notification couldn't be done, but I don't know how it would be done or who would be doing it. I don't know if it would be ESS or somebody else. And And I would also just generally make the judgment that, you know, without the additional income that we have talked about in your proposal, you know, it's just not going to be feasible to do the development work on that. It just isn't. So I'm not going to say it can't be done under, you know, a vendor system as outlined in this bill, but there's nothing in the bill that really provides for that. You know, ironically, the way the amendment is structured, ESS would still have the response or the authority to establish a notification system, but I don't think that we would have the means to do it.
This is kind of like Sophie's choice. But I feel we need some common ground, and I think there is a consensus that we all want and need some additional resources in our offices. So, anybody else want to talk about this?
Yeah, this is Travis. I'm going to chime in real quick here. The two things I'm most uncomfortable with is the language referring to a statewide vendor. These are open public records under Chapter 22. We provide them at no cost to anybody that wants to look them up on a statewide system. I'm not at all in favor of going to some sort of private company to do this who potentially could charge, put them behind a paywall. That is contrary to Chapter 22. We are supposed to provide these records at the reasonable fee, and I strongly believe in that. So that makes me incredibly uncomfortable, that language. Also, I'm in agreement with Phil as far as I feel like if you want to go your own way, I do believe that our submitters should have the ability to still submit their documents through Iowa Land Records if they so choose. You know, there's been a lot of talk about competition, and so you know, okay, well, let the free market choose. If some of these vendors, because I know there are some stakeholders and some entities that submit statewide that are going to want to continue to utilize the one system. So those are my thoughts on those two items.
Travis, this is Julie. Do you have a recommendation on how we could reword statewide vendor?
Off the top of my head, but I guess I'm trying to figure out why that language was inserted there in the first place. You know, where that came from. You know, I mean, it obviously came from somewhere. There's a reason for it. I feel like we've been told a few times, oh, you know, this isn't to dismantle, but language like that opens the door for it. And nobody can deny that. So I don't know why when we have this county run, county supported public website that's doing this, that can't charge for these records, we wouldn't continue to refer to that statewide website that we've already built and spent so much money on. So that's my, I don't know why that language needs to be there.
So you want to just insert like Iowa Land Records or the ESS system, statewide system already, just statewide, just interject our name instead of statewide vendor?
I mean, that would make me much more comfortable if that was the case.
I
This
agree.
is
I like
Denise.
that
That's
too.
what I'd like to see.
Me too. This is Jolene.
This is Natalie, and I completely agree with Travis too. I feel like I did hear yesterday that one of the representatives mentioned that some of, I guess, maybe this wording or whatever, that associations shouldn't be allowed to, I guess, come up with some of this language. Am I saying that correct for anybody that was listening?
I
That was
heard that too.
legislation should do. So
Yeah.
I do have some concern with that if that kind of means the same thing. But also, Representative Nordman also said that he was not married to this language that is in his House file. So I guess now would be the time, because we discussed before, there's this House file is going to keep moving from what it sounds like.
Well, I concur. I mean, like Phil,
Yes.
do you see that would hinder? I mean, I don't, I guess that's not the word. I guess we should insert that.
I don't know if there's something else at work, but you know, to me, just talking about vendors and that, it just doesn't make sense. And so that's what leads me to say, okay, if you want these two things that are very important to you, then let's just keep the current framework, and then you operate outside of that as you desire. Um, I I I just don't think there's any need for confusing language like this at all, if that's not what people really mean or even want to do. Um, I I think that, you know, there are some who might have a perception that, you know, the $1 that we currently get, that's just for the search application, and that the e-submission dollars are there to support e-submission. And that's not the way it is. The whole supports the whole, you know, it all goes into the same pool, and then we present it to the ESS committee, and some of it does support the search application, and some of it supports e-submission, but it is one system. And you know, so, and when we talked originally about keeping the $3 e-submission fee and then having a $3 allocation, um, there was no thought that somehow the uses of those funds would be separated. It would all go into the same pool. And in answer to a question I saw posted, you know, if those extra resources were there, then yes, we could do a notification system. But as structured right now, um, you know, uh, that $1 would not come close to letting us advance in any other area. So that's what leads me to back to say, okay, we're not in the Senate. I know we're not in the Senate. I know Senate File 371 is not eligible bid anymore, but it's fairly clean language. And we could much more easily amend that to do what the advocates of 328 want to do. You went out of the 2080 agreement, we can write language to do that. You do not want to participate in all of the stuff relating to the 2080 agreement, we can do that. If you want to work with an outside vendor on a different channel for e-submission, you can do that. That's what they've said they wanted. But in exchange, come on, still support the whole system as we know it, and you know, and you know, participate, upload your records, uh, and participate in our e-submission service when you receive, you know, a document through it. Um, and you know, I think all we'd be saying is we want to kind of have that in writing to make sure, you know, that it's a commitment to do. And if you do those things, you know, you kind of begin to have you know, a package um, that everybody can support. You get closer to it anyway. We still have to resolve these issues in terms of passing a bill that, you know, we don't have universal support among the stakeholders for the P policy program, the inclusion of the back to blue language and shifting it to a shielding program. While we talked about it, that's not a slam dunk by any means, because you know, of kind of how the bar and the bankers and others feel about that. So, you know, there's a lot more work that has to be done, but I think this combination of things gets us closer to moving forward. Or we can just say no and wait till next year.
Okay, are there any other comments from the ESS committee? We're getting quite a long line here over on the chat pod, so any other comments from ESS coordinating?
This is Dylan. I just want to just real quickly provide a stakeholder input. Obviously, I only speak from my limited view, but to me, I'm for negotiating with the legislative and letting the legislative process work out. Provided at the end of the day, we have
just plain yellow mustard. That's plenty.
Everybody, please mute yourself. We're getting people talking over Dylan. Go ahead, Dylan, please.
Thank you. All good. You know, provided at the end of the day, what we have is a cohesive statewide search portal, a cohesive statewide filing system, and consistent fees. My biggest concern with allowing different vendors is that opens up the door to having shifting fees. So you don't have certainty in filing a document in one county is the same as the other. You know, there was a comment at the subcommittee yesterday about the fact that if an outside of the state entity wants to use one of the nationwide filing systems, they pay a fee to them and they pay a fee to land records. And that's their choice, right? They can all go to land records today and pay the consistent fee. So for me, it's provided that we have consistency across all 99 counties, that we can go to, you know, a one place to find the documents, one place to file it, and the fee is the same. As long as that's available, I think that should be the end goal. And if we can get there through the legislative process, that's great, and that's what I would support.
Thank you, Dylan. Any other ESS coordinating comments real quick? Okay, there's quite a few here to scroll back through, and I will try to get to the top. Let's see, I think it started at 233. So the intent, this is Renee's comment, the intent of breaking them apart was because in code, the statewide search has to be there to mandate all of us to pay the $1. Everything else would do with Iowa land records would be strictly in the 2080 language. So the $3 carve out and the $3 e-fee, that is why they were broken apart. Any comments from coordinating on that or questions? Okay. Aaron at 237 says, Jamie, there's zero reference in the amendment to an RFP. There has been discussion about the standard process for government is to go through the RFP process. I believe the intent would be that if counties participating in the 2080 wanted to start the RFP process, then they could. The auditors, treasurers also have some common systems, but those are not named in code. Questions from ESS? Okay. At 240, we had Renee's comment of if they do decide to put it up for RFP and code, it would still be up to the association to choose the vendor. It would just make things public and transparent. That's what the purpose of having the RFP language is, but they have not put the language in anything yet. Followed by Aaron's comment at 242, so there would be no means to provide a property fraud alert system with the additional $1.3 million that the fee increase would generate for Iowa land records. Question. I don't need to just read this, but are there any comments from coordinating committee on any of those? Okay, I'll keep reading because I want to be sure we have it all recorded. Renee commented at 244, it was changed to statewide vendor to make it more general in case the legislature decides to put an RFP in the code. This has zero to do with any vendors. Sarah asked if there's a way to word anything associated with ILR that it is a division of ICRA. If we own it, maybe it needs to be recognized more. Just an opinion. Comments? Okay, I'll keep going. Aaron then commented at 247, a vendor is a provider of services. ESS is a vendor of services that happens to be run by ICRA. Let's see. Samantha did ask a question just to get participant 183160 to add their name so we have it recorded in the notes. Deb asked people to name themselves when they speak so it's clear. Aaron at 250 said, I think your suggestion is to completely scrap the work that the representatives has done to this point on House File 328 and replace it with the exact language of Senate File 371, which is dead. Then there isn't any intent to compromise. And Carolyn commented at 251, we and several other counties have websites for searching for years, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Renee, you don't want Iowa Land Records to stop being the statewide search repository, correct? To which Renee responded, that is correct, Carolyn. And then she commented, if we are all mandated to pay the $3 carve out and still mandates us to use Iowa Land Records for recording, that defeats the whole purpose of getting out of the 2080. And Jordan commented at 253, I'm sorry I wasn't able to jump in right at 2, so maybe this has already been talked about. I believe we do have room for compromise. If this bill is truly going to make it through, we need to be able to make it work for all counties. We have a few counties opting out of the 2080. They need to be paying their fair share of the maintenance fees. I don't believe it to be fair that to keep the $1 fee instead of the $2 fee we had talked about at ISAC. It sounded like we have been supplementing those $1 fees with other e-filing fees. We were told yesterday that we need to show the finance proof that the maintenance costs more than $1. So I hope we can get that to them timely. And the last one, Renee at 253 said, if they want the consistency of Iowa Land Records, please keep in mind they can still use ILR for e-recording just like they do today. Okay, so we're current. Any questions or additional comments from ESS?
I just want to make one comment, and that is that I hear it said that everybody should continue to use the ILR e-submission service, but if every county doesn't use it, then it's really not correct to say that they can still use ILR for e-recording. If a county says, I'm not going to use the interface for e-submission from ILR, I'm only going to use the one that my other vendor is providing, then you're basically saying that you're not going to be a part of the statewide system because you're forcing everybody to go through a different channel as opposed to giving others the option to do it. So I think that is, maybe just a point of clarification that, a statewide system to me, and I think financially and otherwise, means that you're going to use the statewide system, both the portal or the search side as well as the e-submission side. That's what that means. And the intention of what we have talked about at the top to say, if you want to have a supplement to use a different channel, do that. If you don't want to be in the 28E agreement for all of the other policy knowledge, okay, but you still have to follow the technical requirements to participate in the system. And if you don't really intend to do that, then you really do not have a statewide system, in my opinion. And I think that's kind of what Dylan was saying too. So maybe there isn't room for middle ground if that is what the position is. But I think the thought has been that we at least advance something that could represent some middle ground. And if there's no agreement, there's no agreement. But it seems like something that ought to be at least offered in that vein. And if it's not agreed to, then I guess we know what happens next. So I'm at this point, you've been at it for an hour, and I know that that probably isn't nearly enough time to reach a confident conclusion. But I think, as Jordan was saying, we kind of need to decide what direction we're going. And, if all of you who are not on the ESS committee, have additional input, you can communicate with your representatives on the governing board. But I would, if you can, and maybe you can't, but if you can, is there a direction that you can offer to myself and your lobbying team? This is an action item on the agenda if you desire to make a motion or whatever. Um, it's your right to do that. And if you can't, if it's too soon, I understand that too. But we didn't want to ask your direction today, if we can.
This is Julie again. Now, Phil, just so I understand, and I'm sorry that I have to ask this question again, but what we want to do is give the 328 positions that they want to opt out of the 28E agreement. Now, in their bill, you wanted to kind of insert the wording of our bill, that the 371 that has all some of the things that we wanted. And then, but in there you have, it talks about the electronic services system. Is that part of what you wanted to keep?
Yeah, I think whether you retain the term county land record information system or electronic services system, I think you can think about them as the same. And maybe it's just not possible to port all of the language in 371. I'm not saying you can't amend House File 328, but as written, it's kind of difficult to navigate, especially if you are very uncertain about what people mean by a vendor. So
Right, so
that was my thought.
well, that's the thing, that's the thing that Travis and Jamie were talking about. Is that what you wanted, Travis? That you wanted it to say the electronic services system?
I'm just not comfortable with the language with referring to it as a statewide search vendor, because we already have a system. I have no desire to utilize anything else at this point.
Right, but I'm just saying, it looks like to me that it's in what we're proposing is that it stays electronic services system. Is that correct, Phil, or am I incorrect?
Yes, we're proposing to basically keep that structure the same.
Okay,
Others may not agree to that, okay, but
right,
I do think it is the most sensible thing to do. And again, I think that the offer is, okay, do some things to give more flexibility to the counties that want to do something different or in addition to what we're already doing, and to literally not be a part of the 2080 agreement. I don't have any other ideas, guys. And at some point, I think I have to say, it's probably not us that decides, some of these issues. Do the stakeholder groups who have not really weighed in on this yet, they're the ones who mandated it in the beginning. We didn't do that. So are they comfortable in not having a 28-year agreement? And what are they going to say? Because they haven't weighed in yet. We have been asked as a group to provide constructive suggestions, and this is what we come up with. It may not be adequate from either side. And so
So when you say that they would still be required to upload their documents into the electronic services system. Is we want to keep that language. I think that's what I understand them saying. Not the language that says statewide vendor.
I think we would, except for, some variation in participation, the plan would be, and to give some counties some additional flexibility. The idea is to keep the system that we have for both search, uploading, and e-submission. But
This is Natalie.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think we definitely have to come up with some sort of amendments or something and give back to them. Otherwise, I think it's going to go through just the way that it is. Am I wrong, I guess, to say that? And as far as the stakeholders and what Dylan said, I completely agree for them knowing the fees and everything, but then hopefully the stakeholders would be using ILR and not, I guess, the private vendor of those who opted out of the 2080.
So is there a motion at all to give direction from the ESS committee?
Can you clarify, I guess, give direction?
Could you ask me this question again, Natalie?
It just said, Anne asked if there was a motion. Did she say for direction?
Right, based on where we want to go next on a recommendation for the amendment, which we've been talking around for a while.
Okay.
According to the chat pod, it says 6 weeks. I don't know if it's been that long. We've been worrying about this for quite a while, it seems. But the declaration and next steps on agenda, where do we go from here? So I've heard the conversation of strip out some of the detail from Senate File 371. I've heard that we don't like the language statewide search vendor. Is there any specific direction or motion that we would like to advance and then be able to give direction for our legislative group?
This is Julie. What I heard today is that we want the language to be the electronic service system / Iowa land records, however you want to word it, the way our system is now. And what was the other thing, Travis, that concerned you?
Well, as long as everybody still has the ability to e-submit documents to whatever county they choose through the Iowa land records system. I guess this is going to come up with some convoluted fee things. I would assume we would still be able to collect our $3 e-submission fee for people that utilize the system. It does feel a little to me like there's people won't be paying for without the carve out money, but I'm all for you want to give them an option, then let's give them an option. Because the Department of Revenue isn't going to start navigating multiple systems. The DOT isn't going to do that. Farm Credit Service isn't going to do that. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm tired of this conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
I just wanted to, mention, I feel like some of the comments, might be slightly on the aggressive side. I want to remind everybody that, there's basically 90% of us that are all still standing, in support of Iowa Land Records. I feel like this whole situation has gone on way too long. Part of me feels like, you know, if all the parties want to go back to the drawing board, it would be better suited to work out something and work towards next year's legislative agenda. But that's apparently not the way the other side feels. They want to force the rest of us into a corner to make this sort of decision. So here we are. But I would get behind a compromise amendment if it retained our language. I don't feel like putting the Senate file language to, because I do agree that this amendment is very confusing in the language. And it's, you know, the end result is that these people want to be able to get out of the 2080 and do their own thing. Then let's give that option, and let's not muddy the waters with a bunch of other stuff. You know, if you truly don't want to dismantle what we have, then I don't see any reason why there would be any issue with that, if that's truly the case. Um, I'm not convinced otherwise, though, just yet. But it would go a long way towards convincing me if we could utilize our existing language and then give you the vehicle to do what you want to do. So that's my opinion on it. That's all I'm going to say at this point. I'm mentally exhausted from talking about this. So
yeah.
Let's figure this out and
Man,
Yeah, Travis.
be
I
done with
agree.
it, for crying out loud.
I agree.
So Travis, you gonna make a motion?
Do you, if you'll let me put words in your mouth, I think if you just want us to say we're tired of this and this is not where we want to go, that's one thing. The other direction would be, would you authorize us, that is your representatives, to suggest the ideas that I described to you with the conditions? Meaning participation means participation, not, you know, exit. But if you don't want to be in the 28-year agreement, we can make that happen. And if you want to have clear authorization to work with another vendor in addition to Iowa Land Records, you know, then we can make that happen, which is what I understood the main objective to be. Maybe I misunderstood it. And then, you know, advance those ideas and provide the financial information that has been requested, which, you know, I can give some rudimentary answers about, okay, if I had to split the system into two and put a budget together for them, what would that look like? I've started to work on that, and I'll have something done by the end of the week. And then, you know, when we talk to Representative Nordman, which kind of what we're looking at communicating early next week, and we can do that. And as you know, as something to communicate other than just saying no. But even then, I just want to caution everybody again, that doesn't mean anything's gonna pass per se. I know some are very confident, but you know, the stakeholders are not on board quite yet with everything else. And you know, at some point they will weigh in. I don't know when or on what issue, but they will. So we'll have to wait for that to happen. But do you wish to authorize us to put something together within the general framework that we've discussed, or are you just done with it and you want to say we'd like to wait until next year? Let's just work on this over the interim, and we'll see you next year. I think those are kind of two choices. Bob Rafferty is on. I don't know, Bob, if you wanted to add a final comment on that, but
No, I think you summarized it well, and I think I do want to emphasize the idea that we could come to a compromise on this, and that the stakeholders would accept that compromise is a big leap at this point, especially as it relates to the fee structure.
This is Natalie. So Bob, did you say the stakeholders are not?
We have not, they have not taken a position on our legislation, our initial legislation. They were undecided, but they have voiced concerns that their members have some real concerns with doubling the fee. I think, Phil, did I capture that accurately?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
It's
so
Natalie
direct,
again, sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
I feel we have to do something. Otherwise, like I say, I feel it's going to go through. I'm not sure if I want to be the one to make that motion, because I know there was concern at ISAC last week about what we voted on as the association and what they were okay with moving forward. Is this something completely different? I mean, do we have to run it by the association? Like you say, do we wait till next year? But can we wait till next year?
This is Melissa. This isn't our bill, so I'm not sure that we have to run it by the association, but as ESS coordinating committee member, we each represent somebody. So I'm not sure if we have enough time or the timeline that you were given, Phil, or whoever was there in person. If we as committee members could see the financials and share and discuss with our district, or if you're wanting us to do something today, or if there could be a very short meeting next week.
You know, it's up to you. I know, you know, it's not a timeline of our choosing. And you know, we have this just isn't something we thought about overnight. I tried to present some of it to you all at the ISAC conference. I know that got a little bit crazy, but you know, that just happens to be the situation that we're in. And you know, I empathize with everybody. But I would say that if we don't say something soon, it's sort of the equivalent of no. You know, and you know, um, and wanting to try and be constructive and not burn bridges and so on. I'm kind of feeling like I want to say something, and you know, kind of reading in between the lines of the chat pod here. You know, I'm kind of sensing that the answer is going to be no to us. I mean, what we described to you, but I, 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 I would recommend saying something similar to what we've described. But if you really are all in on this from the standpoint of just saying, you know, we cannot make a decision on this in that short of time, you know, that is an answer. And, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens then after that. But your association has already staked out a position that says no. Okay, you're against the bill. ESS, we have tried to sort of keep the conversation going, but I think, you know, we're probably at the point where we need to either offer something or we just need to say we've talked about it, but we can't come up with a way to get to yes. that's sort of where we're at. Bob, again, you're on the ground. Do you see it any differently than that?
No, I don't, but I would like to do an and. If the decision is to just say no, I would request that it be we're not ready to propose a compromise at this point, but we would be committed to continuing to work on this issue over the interim. So I would encourage having at least one of those two positions.
Could you repeat that again then?
Oh, yes, yes. Either they would be comfortable with moving forward, proposing some compromise language along what you have outlined, or that, no, we do not feel comfortable with that compromise at this point, but we would commit to continuing this conversation if there's a willingness to continue to work over the interim on this.
This is
So
Travis again.
I would encourage you not to just say no.
This is Travis again. I want to remind everybody that nobody's got a slam dunk. There are still other pieces at play. We have some very powerful stakeholders that are certainly going to weigh in at some point. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to make a motion that we allow the ESS lobbyists and our project manager to continue the conversation with some possible amendments that we have discussed here today in regards to using some of our language from Senate File 371, maintaining a statewide system of providing a vehicle for those that want to get out of the 28E to get out of the 28E, and changing the language that refers to statewide vendor.
I'll second that, Travis. I think I'm gonna just back up just a second before I second it, but I just think we need to give Representative Nordman something. I think a hard no would be, I mean, we've worked so hard on this Senate file number, and we've worked so hard to try to get increase in fees that to give a hard no would probably not be in our favor. So to offer some compromise that contains the wording from our Senate File 371 and allows recorders to opt out of the 28E agreement, which is what they want to do, because we haven't really talked about anything else. So like we haven't talked about other things like how much are they going to pay, and is it going to be standardized across the board? First we have to get the increase in fees to decide what we're going to ask them to pay. So I think that I think we should put something on the table. So I would second. Is that what you're trying to say, Travis?
Sure.
Just to clarify, that was Julie, right? Seconded?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So we have a motion from Travis, which I will not repeat, and a second from Julie. Is there any further discussion from the ESS committee?
This is Melissa Bonson. I just wanted to say, I don't feel like any of the ESS members today clearly said we didn't want to allow them out. I think we all have been to kind of a consensus that we're at the point where they want out, we need to let them out. But we need means to still maintain a statewide system. And I also have the same concerns about the vendor language, and as in Travis's motion, keeping that to the same would be a priority.
Absolutely, Melissa.
I mean, at the end of the day, Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, this is Joanne. I agree. Travis, Julie, Melissa. I think we need to compromise. I think we need to move forward with something. I'm all for the fee increases. I hope that someday we can work on a statewide fraud alert system. I have people that come into my office probably once a week asking about fraudulent deeds and recordings. So I hope someday we can pursue that. But yeah, I think we need to move forward. I agree. I'm tired of this conversation and we need to do something. That's just my opinion.
This is Jamie. I would echo what everyone else has said. I also think it needs to be clear among our ESS coordinating committee that whatever is proposed as an amendment that we're going to make, that we make darn sure that we take that back to our districts and the people that we represent. So we get clear direction from those people as well on how they want us to proceed.
Okay, any other comments from ESS coordinating?
Yeah, Travis, again, at the end of the day, what I wanted to say, the bottom line is that the people that want out of this are gonna have to answer to their electors and their stakeholders. And so if they're not happy with them for that, then that's their issue, I guess. You know, I guess that's it. So.
Okay, so I will call for the vote. All in favor, please in the chat pod on the ESS committee, just type in aye if you are in favor of the motion on the floor. And I will read them when they are all in.
Hang on one second. I'm just gonna run through the list here, make sure we didn't miss anybody. I see Denise. Jamie, are you in that list? Oh, yes, I see you. I think
Okay.
that looks like everybody.
All right, I'll read them off. Melissa, aye. Jolyn, aye. Dylan, aye. Natalie, aye. Julie, aye. Jamie, aye. Travis, aye. Denise, aye. Christy, aye. And Eric, aye. And Anne, aye. So that is all in favor. Unanimous vote. No need to call for the nay.
Thank you, everybody. When we have something more tangible, that can be shared, we will certainly do that. Timely, obviously, I don't have any doubt that Representative Nordman would receive some information about this discussion already, and that's fine. It'll take, a little bit to pull some of the numbers together that we talked about, and then we'll try and circulate it back to the members of the committee as soon as we can, and then ask you to disseminate it to your respective districts, if that's okay.
So we're thinking early next week.
I'm thinking that on Monday is when that's kind of our expected deadline. So yeah, maybe I would put it this way: it probably will be disseminated simultaneously. So hopefully we get it right.
Okay, District 3 will be meeting on Tuesday, so that's why I'm pushing.
Okay.
We will be in person celebrating the retirement of our dear friend, Kelly Seward. And I am remiss, I missed David when I was listing off the ayes. So there is one more on that list of ayes.
So jealous of Kelly Seward.
Yeah, I think we all might be.
Are. Yeah, we all are.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. I hope everybody's okay with the weather out there. And We'll be in touch very soon. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Bill.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.